Thank you very much for joining us. I am Iyori Folari. Hope you had a great weekend. Well, here we are. On Friday, that's the last program we had. We had gone off air when the horrible news came through of the attack on Benue. As you know, it was on Friday that we heard about this robbery attack hitting a number of banks, attacking police formations. We sustained the loss of a DPO and other police officers, and it caught everybody by shock. It really shocked everybody. Today, let's look at such an incident because it is reported that they went to your usual cutlass-wielding robbers or that kind of a thing. They came prepared, sophisticated armaments, explosives, and indeed, they wreaked havoc on the town. Well, to look at this and maybe how it happened and what could have been done and what will be done subsequently, two experts, Dr. Tony Ofoyetan in studio here, Director General, International Institute of Professional Security. Tony, thank you very much for coming on.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning to you, sir. And Dr. Kabir Adamu, MD, Beacon Consulting Limited, joins us remotely from Abuja. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us, Kabir.
My pleasure, Uncle Yori. Good morning.
Thank you too, sir. Okay, starting off here, Tony, give me your impression because, look, we know we have challenges, security challenges, but that was dastardly, and it was as bold as you can imagine. It was in broad daylight. They operated reportedly for almost 2 hours, and generally were running affairs, the dastardly affairs. What does all of that say to you, Tony, in the first instance?
Well, I think from the information I gathered, it was a well-orchestrated and well-planned operation. Before the operation, they had been in that community or that city. They've done their own surveillance. In actual fact, we learned that they were actually at that police station to look at the numerical strength and capability. They also went to DSS office in the pretense of trying to look for somebody to see the capability of DSS within that locality, whether they are well prepared. They went to the vigilante office in that place, even requested for the head of the vigilante group of that place. Now, that they were able to size up the resistance within that community. And from the information we had, even the DSS were already aware, and they have given intelligence to the police formation there, that there are strange faces within the community. Invariably, the intelligence was not used, or it was not counted as being that serious. Okay. Unfortunately, the DPO that even ought to, tell stories of why the intelligence was not used is now with the casualty, so to say, which speaks a lot of volume. Because what they did is, first of all, dissipate. You see that the first place was the police station.
Oh, okay. Some reports said that they had first of all attacked the bank.
They divided themselves into different groups.
Everything was going on simultaneously.
They divided themselves into different groups. Those that went to police station was because they needed to put down and reduce the resistance to the barest minimum. While those at the operation of the bank, it took the intervention of the military or the assistance of the military to actually reduce that casualty as much as before the police could even organize themselves, before the police could talk about coming to counter or resist and all those stuff like that. Now, you will see that one of the people that was killed was a Fulani man, then the other one is a local. Now, that means that these people work symbiotically. Okay. Don't forget that the Ghana group had, since the death of Ghana in Benue State, the Ghana group has broken into different splinter groups. So you have these groups in their different, and what would they be looking for? They need to survive. So there's the necessity and the drive for sustenance. Apart from the fact that, okay, there could also be a continuation of the agenda of, the militia groups and the like, those that are pursuing and pushing for the agenda of, you know, the mayhems in Benue and the Benue region. So at the end of the day, you see it was a product of failed intelligence or unused intelligence. Yeah. Let me not say failed, let me say unused intelligence. And of course, you also see at the end of the day too that even the banks themselves, what will they be able to do in this circumstance? They are not as fortified as expected. Well, so all these groups suffer their own casualty. We expect that a state like Benue State, being one of in the forerunner, the burning state in this country, will be able to be proactive enough to understand that there are places, Otukpo, Makurdi, and the other place, the three major cities. There are cities that ought to be well fortified. Okay. Well fortified.
Let me come over to you, Kabir. You know, the question is also being asked as to, look, are these bandits or terrorists? Because such was the level of their preparation. Imagine traveling with explosives, reportedly. I hesitate to say what kind of explosive. Might have been dynamite, but, you know, they came prepared. As Tony has been saying, they would have done their recce, would have known what they were up against. Are these terrorists or robbers, or is it possible to combine the two? Did you hear me? I fear we might have lost contact. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Okay. So sorry about that. I was saying that, and I hope you heard Tony before.
Yes, I did. Yes, I actually had your question.
Oh, okay. So the question was, are these terrorists or bandits, or is it possible to have a blend of the two, considering the level of preparedness and the armaments? We've been hearing about superior firepower. Who has that? Do ordinary bandits have superior firepower?
So your question, brings us to the issue of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in the country. We've discussed this extensively in previous appearances, where we have the view that there are more arms in circulation in the
Sorry to interrupt you. I beg your pardon for interrupting you, but we heard of rocket-propelled RPGs.
So yes, in the context of our conversation, weapons of that nature, even though they're military-grade weapons, are in the hands of non-state armed groups. And that was the point I wanted to bring out, that we have a situation in the country where you have non-state armed groups in possession of weapons where they're able to challenge the supremacy of the use of force by the state. Any group that is brazen enough to come out 2 p.m. in the afternoon to 3 p.m. and frontally challenge the state, it tells you that that group feels that it can get away with that act that it conducted. And the only reason why it can do that is because it believes it's in possession of weaponry that it can withstand whatever arsenal the state throws at it. So that is the center of it. With regards to your question, who could be behind that? Now, if you look at where Otukpo is situated in Benue State, there are, within Benue State itself, there are several groups that have that kind of capability, starting from the militia groups, and I'm happy Tony mentioned Ghana, the late Ghana, that remains unsolved. The group he headed, we're aware that he was able to create an active non-state armed group until the time he died, and nobody has answered the question of what happened to that group. That group has disintegrated. Some of them are still extremely active. And then aside from that, there are the bandit groups that are affiliated to both ethnic groups that are within the region, most of them armed. Number 3 are the state creations that have been weaponized. And unfortunately, we do not think, and in all honesty, the level of control over those state-level security apparatus that have been created have not given me enough confidence to tell me that they cannot be associated with acts like the ones that we're discussing. The fourth point is to look at the neighboring location to Otukpo and Benue State. If you look to the south, states like in the entire Niger Delta region and the southeastern states, you have active non-state armed groups that can easily cross into Benue and carry out those type of acts and escape. If you look to the north, you find Taraba State, where in the last few months, we've noticed an increase actually in the type of violence perpetrated by these non-state armed groups. So in simple terms, there are several possibilities with regards to what group could carry out that. And that's not to exclude the statement released by the police suggesting that that group is actually local to Otukpo. In other words, these are criminal groups who found access to weapons and then were able to carry out that group specifically for criminal purposes.
Okay. Well, you see, Tony, well, even as has already been said by Kabir, even the local security vigilante groups, all those ones were wiped out. And but it wasn't. I mean, it's still one is still mourning the loss of the gallant police officers who sacrificed, who made the ultimate sacrifice. But two of them reportedly were also killed when they abandoned their vehicles upon being accosted on their way out, and then they escaped on foot. And the Inspector General of Police has directed that they must be apprehended. Talk about that whole area, that they actually absconded on foot. How were they able to abscond if they were if there was hot pursuit and that happened? You abandoned your vehicle, and you now escaped into the forest, reportedly.
One thing you must understand is before this type of operation, there are a lot of variables and considerations. It's not an operation that was jumped into. It was a well-planned and well-orchestrated.
Okay.
Now, I'll give you an example. In your community where you stay today, it will shock you that the bike riders, they know the nook and cranny more than you do. They can abandon the bike and they know when they take any place, they know where they will get to. So before this operation, don't forget I told you that the DSS gave a report that there are strange faces in this community before then. Unfortunately, the information or the intelligence was not used. So a man or group of people that abandoned their vehicle and decided to go on foot escape, they knew their route. They knew where they would go into, even maybe inside a canal, inside a hole, and you will pass them and you would have even lost them within a twinkle of an eye. It was something that had been planned ab initio. For me as a person, I think that it comes back to play on certain things. When Dr. Adamu was talking, he was talking about some of these things. You look at what are the areas we are not getting it right. Proliferation of arms is one of such. Now, you have problem with arming Amoteco. Why? Because you reportedly believe that it can be misused. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you are now leaving them vulnerable. What happens if you have state police that has been a major issue? Why can't the government come to terms with the fact that a lot of things are changing and we need to also change with tide of events? Why can't we have state police? In Lagos State, in many of the states, they already have state police. The only difference is that they have not been armed and legally they have not been proclaimed as such. That's all. Yes. You have Sokoto Marshal, you have LASMA, you have, ISBA. You have a lot of them. Each state in this country, they have their own militia groups. They can start with traffic. At the end of the day, they end up attending to some other issues outside traffic. For me as a person, I think that if you say that this governor of a state is the chief security officer of his own state, then you should give him everything. I repeat, everything it takes him to be able to protect his state. If you give him everything it takes him to protect his state, it will reduce the burden and the load the federal government is carrying. It's too heavy. Yeah. Federal government will never, I repeat, I'm not talking as a prophet of doom. Mm-hmm. No matter what we do as it is now with the present security architecture, no matter what to do, federal government will never be able to police the whole nation. Never be able to police the whole nation. The government had to look inward, break down this thing, give each state responsibility backed up with the necessary powers and tools. And one of such is create state police, give them the required arms and ammunition, the legal backing. Let them source for how to. Then at that point in time, if there's any security breach, you and I will not be calling on President Tinubu. You and I will not be calling on the chief of service chiefs and the like. We will conveniently call on someone. We will conveniently call on other governors to say, this is, but as it is today.
Even though those people are today called the chief security officer.
It's just a nomenclature.
Exactly.
They don't have anything it takes to be the chief security officer.
Coming back to you, Kabiru, do you believe also that the government is seriously lacking in its in the way it is addressing these situations like this? Things like state police, things like arming. I mean, we have to go by the rules, and as Tony has said, and as a lot of people also understand, the fear that you can't arm anybody but the police and the army, you know, principally, for fear of all of these things being misused. Is it a time for a rethink, do you think?
So I think it's important that we give this some context. Number one is to emphasize the point that at the moment, the Constitution only recognizes federally armed security agencies. That is constitutionally. Well, like Tony mentioned, the reality is that I doubt if there is any state in the country at the moment that does not have a security apparatus that is armed in one way or the other. So despite the constitutional provision, the reality is that the reverse is the case. Now, we also know that in the Renewed Hope agenda, which is the policy outline of the current administration, they have indicated a level of agreement, as it were, for state-level security creation. Now, what form that will take is not yet clear. Of course, as we know, this government is still new. It's still in the process of establishing some of the policies that it did indicate in the Renewed Hope agenda. So we're hoping that going forward, we will see a manifestation of what it means by this state-level security creations. One of the things that I know the new government is looking at is the Rufai report on police reform. And that report was very clear in the fact that it did embrace state policing. But then will that state policing be subsumed under the current federal policing architecture, or would it be autonomous like what we have in the United States as an example? So all of these are things that I think in time it will play out. There are so many levels of the decentralization of security. It's not as easy as some people mention. You can decentralize security in different forms. You could decentralize it with a federal supervision, as it were. You could have autonomous units, and then you could also have some levels of policing decentralized. In other words, you could still have the IG as the head, and then have maybe admin functions, operational functions decentralized. So all of this, as we go into this new government, as they begin to roll out their policies, we will note it. But suffice to say, I'm supportive. There are gaps within our security architecture that allows non-state actors to exploit and kill our citizens. One of the best ways, if we handle it well, is to have...
I beg your pardon for interrupting, but George has come on the line. George has called in from Ikeja. Good morning to you, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Yeah.
Good morning to your guests as well. Yes. Uncle Yori, I saw that those video clips on television. What I can say is that does not look like a case of simple armed robbery. The military is launching onslaughts on these bandits here and there. And there is every tendency that they will graduate to this arm of crime. Instead of operating and kidnapping people into the bush, they might resort, or they're already resorting to this type of, terrible banditry, breaking banks and killing people. It has happened in Edo State a few months ago. So the government has to be up and doing in it. I support what Tony is saying. How is it that intelligence can be given to the police and it is not well managed? And Uncle Yori, the new government, I thought they promised they were going to do something about police reformation. Some of us have been talking about reforming the police for years now. And I think the government should look into this question of reforming the police. The new IG has come on board, but I'm yet to see his roadmap. What does he intend to do in terms of reforming the police? You know, in security management, ability to prevent is what counts, not when something has already happened. To prevent it, that's where security lies. Now, this one has happened, people have lost their lives and all that. So we want to know what the IG is going to do about police reformation. Okay. And the last thing I want to say on this, sir, when I saw the video clips, the type of roads in that Otukpo where banks are located, I didn't, in a major city, are these roads? I think the government needs to do something. Over the years, the type of roads you have in a town like Otukpo, and those are the places the banks are located. What about other places? The places that the banks are located is normally the commercial areas. So if the commercial areas are looking like that in terms of roads, what of the other places?
I hear you, Mr. George.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling in. Tony, it's known in other jurisdictions, and I imagine, I hope it is the same here. Look, criminals going about their nefarious business, that's one thing. If you shoot a cop in other jurisdictions, you have brought the mother of all Wahala on your head, and there will be no rest until you are apprehended. So when the Inspector General of Police directed that, I was even looking at why the need for that direction. I was surprised that he even still has to direct. If he didn't direct, you mean they were going to just take this as another criminal activity? Does the same operate here, where the police will not rest until they apprehend these guys, simply because it's not a done thing? You don't shoot a policeman or woman, as in this case.
It depends on where the attack is coming from. As it is now, if you ask me, this is not just a case of robbery. It's a combination of robbery and terrorism. And for me, if you are talking about a combination of robbery and terrorism, it will take a well-fortified police formation to be able to go into the habitation of these criminals, to be able to attack them. Now, but for you to successfully do that, you must identify where they are.
Okay.
You must also identify their firepower. You must look at who are their pillars and supports. If common, as serious as it is, but common, what do you call it, ritual killing. Now you arrest the Yahoo boy with human parts, but you are not concerned about the herbalist that told him to go and bring that human parts. What have you succeeded in doing? Nothing.
You've not broken the chain.
Nothing. So look at the trajectory, the way it is being done in the police force now. But I believe the IG is going to change, because it's changing a lot of narratives. Okay. Let us assume that. But look at it from that perspective. Now, these same people that are afraid to go to a shrine of a herbalist, that asks, and then it's easier and safer for you to arrest that boy because he's wearing a dreadlock. He does not. But the Babalawo, the herbalist that asks him to bring it, you are afraid to go to a shrine. Yeah. You are afraid to go and arrest him. Is it the same you that will go to the forest?
I hear you. Well, let me take a break at this stage. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back, and we continue with Dr. Kabir Adamu in Abuja.